I don't know.
Say it again.
There you go.
What's his
Just keep that with you just in case you need
questions? No, we're not gonna be round robin.
I know.
It's all my
it. I work. That's pretty funny.
I mean, I do it.
I actually know the order you guys are going. We're going.
Oh, I'm Okay, let's call our meeting to order. Before we get going, I would just like to ask, just to put it out there in the open, that there's been a lot on social media about coming and disrupting the meeting tonight. And I just want to put that out there right first. I would like to ask everyone to please just, if we could be respectful and honor each other. This is a public meeting, but it's a business meeting of the board. And although we may not agree on, and we obviously don't agree on some of the things on how we're making decisions for the school, we all have the same thing in mind, that we want the best education for our kids. We have a conflict of worldviews on how that needs to happen. If we could just be respectful of each other, not interrupt the meeting tonight, I think we would all, many of us would appreciate that. So that's my request for you, if we would please do that. So I want to thank you ahead of time. All right, so we've called the meeting to order. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
We need to do roll call.
Oh, I have been neglectful. Roll call.
You can still stand. Illingworth.
Here.
Kimbrough. Here. Patterson. Here. Rusterholz.
Here. Now we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Norm Steen, will you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now for our moment of silence, please. Thank you. May I have a motion for approval of this evening's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Roll call.
Illingworth.
Aye.
Kimbrough. Aye. Patterson. Aye. Rusterholz.
Aye. Next on our action item, we did a first reading of our, say it again?
Budget.
Our first one is budget. Do I have a motion for approval of our budget?
We have a presentation first.
After.
Mike's not on.
Oh, that was a bad joke.
Not so fast, Dale.
I've been asked to hurry things up. I neglected to say something. I did want to say this before we get started here, and I thought of it and got kind of distracted. This evening I was asked about, we have an additional camera up here tonight. We were asked about putting this up here. A lot of board meetings do have that. I thought that in light of the threats that we had received and the disruption potential, that it might just be prudent to have an extra camera. I wanted to make sure that it was full disclosure that you had that, and that anybody who needs to fix their hair like I did, that you have an opportunity now to do it before we start. So thank you, everyone. Now, without further ado, Mr.
All
Dell.
right, thank you very much. Thanks for letting me be here. I know that on the agenda, everybody saw budget, and that's why everybody's here, so I appreciate that. All right, so just want to go through a few things. You already received the packet for the proposed revised budget. That was in the packet you received last week. We want to talk a little bit, some higher level things, some points of emphasis. I want to start with some of the revised revenue, and you can't talk really about revised revenue until you talk about actual student funding, right? So we want to talk about enrollment, and so on the screen, what you see there is the fiscal year 22, that would be last school year, in comparison to this school year, FY 23. So you can see, I don't need to point everything out, but you can see the head count there for Woodland Park School District in FY 22 was 1,833. FY 23, we broke it out a couple of different ways because we have an additional school, and so that was we were able to put those in. So you can see the numbers in black there are without merit, and the number in red is with merit. So you can see the head count in the non-merit schools. The traditional schools would be 1,796 was the actual official head count. These are from the October 1st head count. 2,127 when you include merit into our system. Down 37 students if you look at comparison to FY 22. An additional 294 students with the inclusion of merit into our system. If you look at without, it's negative minus 2.1%. We've dropped about 2.1% non-merit students, and you can add, if you put merit in there, it's an increase of 16% with merit over FY 2022. Now that's head count, so that's not the actual funding piece that comes with us, right? That's the actual whites of the eyes that sit there on October 1st. So when we go to enrollment for the funded pupil count, so we have last year, FY 22, funded pupil count of 1,738, and then you can compare it over to the actual in FY 23, 1,679.5 or 1,977 with merit. And so that is the number that is assigned on October 1st, the amount of funding that comes to the district as a whole. And so you can, that's not the dollars, that's the students that we have funded for. So you can see those, I think the 238.5, those are the students that came from the original merit.
Student attendance.
Correct. I may have rounded some numbers there. Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood.
No, understood.
I messed up on the agenda already. I just want to make sure I was.
It's all good. So then we have to look at the per pupil funding, right? So we now know our numbers, we know our students. So we want to look at the per pupil funding. And last year, in fiscal year 22, the per pupil rate was 8,673 and some change. This year, our funded pupil rate would be 9,155 and a little bit more change. So it's an increase of $482.25 or an increase of 5.56%. So that is what, when you look at that 1,977 total students, let me go back so we make sure. This number here, that is the number that when you multiply by that 9,155.80, that's what our per pupil funding is. We talk about sales tax revenue, that's a revenue to the district. You can see that it's a lot of squiggly lines, so the most important one is the top blue, top light blue. That is for fiscal year '23. Obviously, we have not finished this year, so that's why it stops there in November. But you can see that for the first couple months, we were trending above, we were higher than we have in the past. You can see the pattern kind of follow through. We get a little dip at this time. In November, we did fall below last year's collections, but we do anticipate that following that pattern, we do anticipate the number to go up to be a higher amount in sales tax revenue. Questions on that slide?
The plastic bags will do it.
That's right, because 1.09% of 10 cents goes a long way.
Thank you for having those numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so here's what we're looking at. We're looking at the all funds revenue. So you can see in the different categories there, the different funds. You can see the June adopted budget. So this is what was approved by the board in June. And then the revised budget, which I'm presenting tonight, and the increase or decrease in each fund. So you can see the total there in revenue, general, risk management, food service, all the different things. Okay, so that's the revenue side. If I go to the expenses side or expenditure side, again, you can see the June budget on the far left, revised budget on the right, with an increase and decrease in each one of those categories. So those are the expenditures. So I want to point out a couple of things. If you look in your packet on the assessed valuation on page 1, you can see that the assessed valuation for our school district in Teller County was actually down from previous year. So it was down about $7 million approximately, so 2.2%. So that's going to be obviously a negative part on our valuation on our income. If we want to look at page 2, I'm just pointing out some highlights here for you. If you want to look at page 2, there's a couple of interesting things. If you look under local sources for the revenue, under earnings on investments, you can see that in the approved budget or the adopted budget in June, we thought it might be about $5,000 as we were heading into these financial times. And actually, we're projecting that to be closer to $120,000. So why is that? Well, we believe we made a conscious move to move our money, some money out of our Vectra Wealth, which is more of an equities-based system, into the Colorado Trust in a more interest-based system. And with interest rates going up, we were then able to benefit from that transfer over. So we're looking good there. So that made us very happy. Did want to point out a couple. They're not huge pieces, but I know we've had questions about what these are. And I promised that I would come back and tell you what they are. So tonight I'm going to fulfill that promise. So if you look on mineral leases, and that's going to be right in the middle of the page, mineral leases, we have about $24,000 coming from that. And what that is on a mineral lease is from the government. When you have a town or a community or whatever entity that you have that there's mining involved, then that you get a per pupil funding for those mining leases and those mining pieces. So that's our piece of the pie in terms of the mineral lease from the government. And then the other one is forest allocation. You won't see it listed as forest allocation on yours. It's actually under federal sources down at the bottom where it says other federal sources. And you can see we have 49,943. We thought it was going to be about 10,000. What that is, what a forest allocation is because the federal government will actually give us money because we have so much national forest in our districting that really we can't develop on that. And so we can't build and have property tax on that. So this is coming back to us because we have the national forest. So this is our piece, comes to us from that. So I just wanted to point that out to you. Also wanted to then move over to page 3. A couple of larger pieces need some explanation. If you look at the program 2200, which is the instructional staff support down at the very bottom of that page, you'll see that in the June adopted budget, which was significantly higher than the January revised budget. The reason for that is we took one of the administrative salaries or administrative positions and moved it out of the instructional support and reassigned it to another category, which you'll see in just a minute. Okay, so that explains the drop in that piece, along with some other, obviously little additions to or subtractions from the budget. If I flip over then, on page 4, if I look at the 2,300, so general admin, you can see there's 280,000, something like that, increase from the adopted budget, 595,000 to 842,000. So that, I wanted to draw your attention to that. That is mostly due to post-employment and extra duty pay. And then if you look at Fund 2,800, central support, you'll see that salary, or that increase from 152 to 308, that's where that previous one I was talking about in 2,200 has been reassigned. You can see in 2,200 it went down, in 2,300 it went up. That's where that increase came from. And then a couple of other little things here. If you look on page 7 under food service, particularly want to draw your attention to student lunches. We had a revised budget of nearly half of what our revenue would be from the student lunches. Our participation rate is significantly lower. And so we needed to take that into account. So we thought it would be higher at 480,000 some change, and we're now projecting about 250,000. So to know that that's on there. And then also an additional, you can see on the auditorium. So we're on page 8. I apologize, I should have just said that. On page 8, and these are the designated purpose grants. You can see on the local revenues, there's an auditorium upgrade, about 2 up from the bottom in total local revenue. This was not budgeted for in the June adopted budget. And that's because we have met with some local community members and are going to begin fundraising for upgrades to the auditorium, mainly sound system and those types of situations. And so we're anticipating that would be some revenue coming into us at that point. Questions? Just clear as all get out, right?
It was as clear as can be.
Yeah, how about that? All right, so at this time, I don't know, we'll need to adopt or pass a specific budget resolution number 2. That is also in your packet on page, so I flip through here. Of course, that's the one that doesn't have a page number, but it's back there.
The last page.
Second to last page.
In their packet, it's split.
Oh, I don't see your packet. So
Yeah.
specific budget resolution number 2.
Any questions about the specific?
No. Are there any questions about the specific budget resolutions?
No.
I need a motion.
No,
Did a good job, Del.
Mel has a gift with budget presentations, so.
You do. Well, my team has a gift of putting all this together.
You're right, thank you.
You answered
you.
the question I did hear about the mining, and so you answered that question. Yeah.
Now, we had talked about that, so
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you to your team and thank you to you for the clear and entertaining presentation as always.
Do you need a motion on specific budget resolution?
So,
Make a motion on the other.
we need a motion to accept the specific budget resolution, number 2.
I think you were ahead.
Sue, do I have a second?
Yes.
Second.
Roll call.
Illingworth,
Aye.
Kimbrell,
Aye.
Patterson,
Aye.
Resterholz.
Aye. All right, we're on to,
Not yet. Almost.
We're not.
You're not rid of me yet, sir.
geez.
Now we move to the appropriation resolutions. This would actually be adopted because of the appropriations as listed on the very last page. So,
In my
that's
packet.
in that order for obvious reasons.
Okay. If there's no discussion, I'll move to adopt the specific budget appropriation resolution.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Illingworth,
Aye.
Kimbrell,
Aye.
Patterson,
Aye.
Resterholz.
Aye.
Okay, I promise this is the last thing. I promise. Okay, so key budget dates, this is for us to keep in mind. Obviously, the January 25th revised budget, that is today. In March, we'll be bringing obviously our conversation with the DAC as we start to prepare for FY24, so next year. In March and April, we'll be able to start finalizing enrollment projections, specifically to staffing. In May, and these are all obviously, I don't have specific dates on that, but in May, finalize enrollment projections for the FY24 budget. It's always in May because as long as the legislature's in session, we don't know what that's going to look like. So we'll look at that for enrollment projections in terms of the funding. Then in May, we'll also bring the FY24 proposed budget to the Board of Education. We hope, it's supposed to be the conclusion of the legislative session in May or early June. In June, we also hold the meet and confer large circle. That is our conversation and dialogue with our educational staff. In June, we'll have the public hearing over the FY24, and also in June, the FY24 budget will be brought to the Board of Education for adoption. So just some key dates for you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Goodbye.
Thank you.
It's okay to move on now.
Yes, sir.
All right. On to B, Mr. Witt.
Yes, at the last meeting, I brought a modification of 3 policies, GP8, LBDR, and LBDE. That's the agenda planning and board meetings, the relations with district charter schools, and the intent to apply form. There's no additional changes to these other than reconciling the written digits with the written word of the times. But there, as you reviewed them last month, you've had our last meeting, you've had a couple of weeks to consider that, and at this point, we're just requesting approval.
Since we've had them for several weeks, is there any discussion on changes that we've made?
No, I don't have any discussion. We discussed this greatly last meeting, so.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if there's no discussion, roll call, or do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second,
Second.
roll call?
Illingworth.
Aye.
Kimbrell.
Aye.
Patterson.
Aye.
Resterholz.
Aye. On to action number C, letter C. Interview applicants for Mick Bates, Seth Bryant, and Don Zaleski. Over here are our applicants, and what we're going to do is we're going to go one by one. We were going to start with,
Cassie.
we're starting with Don.
Seth, I think.
We're starting with Seth. So what we're going to do is each director will ask their questions. We're starting with Cassie, and we'll be interviewing one at a time. So if we're going to start with Seth, we're going to ask Don and Mick to step into the back conference room over here, and we will begin.
Can I, before the gentlemen leave, can I add a further comment on that?
Please.
So as I understand, Mr. Resterholz, our plan for tonight is to endeavor to spend 20 minutes with each candidate and not make this a whole thing. And that each director has prepared their own questions, and that the goal is with 4 directors to try and spend 5 minutes with each director, but that the number one priority is that each of the gentlemen has the same opportunity to answer the same questions. And so some of ours may be a bit wordier questions than others. What I would ask is if it turns out that one of the gentlemen has a more thorough or longer answer to some of the questions, if the chair might grant discretion for an additional minute or 2 in the goal of everybody getting the same opportunities with the questions, while of course keeping in mind that we don't want this to turn into an hour, for each person, that we're trying to keep it within 20 minutes.
Yes.
Is that fair, sir?
Yeah, we want each one of you to be able to answer each one of the questions so that nobody is shorted or whatever it takes to get through it without spending all night doing it. Any other questions? Any other comments before we start? Thank you for saying that, David.
Thank you.
Intro.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
I think what we did last time was we invited each of the candidates that they could do an opening or closing if they wish, so that you always have the opportunity to speak in your own words instead of just answering questions put to you. But gentlemen, feel free, if you want to reserve, just until the end, or if you got something for the beginning and the end, whichever you like to do, it's up to you, okay?
Very good.
Fantastic.
Any questions?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Doug.
Kelly's going to show you the way. Seth, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for starting. Do you want to start with an opening statement? Are you ready to get into questions? What would you like to do?
I think I'll save my statement for the end.
Okay.
Nice bow on it.
All right. Well, with that, we'll start out with Cassie, and she has some questions for you.
Hi, Seth.
Hi, Cassie.
Why do you want to be a member of the Board of Education?
I want to be a member of the board for precisely the same reason I got involved with the school accountability committees and the district accountability committee. I really believe that I have the opportunity to make an impact, and that through working and partnering with the other people who are involved and invested in our kids' education, that we can make a better district out of it.
Right. Okay, so my second question, with the facilities not being used in their fullest potential, how does the school board balance the need to provide our community with quality education and with the need to respond to the local taxpayer burden?
I think that's through continuous investigation of what is the best use of our facilities, how they're being used, and how they can best be used to educate this community's children. What the specific, solutions for those types of problems are, I don't know. I don't have that data. I haven't heard experts and things like that. But I do know that in order to pursue excellence, you have to continuously look inward at the processes and drivers for what's happening in your organization. And so if there's room to look at what's happening with our facilities, we have to do that. And we have to turn to expert voices to figure out how to best handle, the needs that, our investigation uncovers.
By the way, is anyone timing me?
Kelly.
Thanks, Kelly. This board ran on a campaign and won for school choice and educational opportunities. What does a parent choice mean to you, and how would you support that as a board member?
I guess parent choice means two things for me. One, a choice in where my child is educated. Is it Colorado Christian Schools or Colorado Springs Christian Schools up here? Is it Merritt, a charter school? Is it homeschooling? Is it one of the public or neighborhood schools? The second part of parent choice is, what is my kid being taught in those schools? So I think that means educating our parents on what their child's going to be learning and how they're going to be learning that, and then also partnering with them to overcome or address any concerns, with the curriculum.
What outside interests and experiences would you bring to the board that would be helpful to this group?
Sure. I've been a technology professional for over 20 years. That career has really exposed me to a lot of different industries. I've worked in education in private parochial schools in Omaha as a technology consultant and coordinator. I've worked in the financial sector, and I've worked in retail. So I've had a broad experience with a number of drivers for business and organizations. All of that, I believe, has given me the experience to approach problems and situations with a fairly diverse background. So not only would I be able to look at a situation from maybe the educational and political concerns that are going on based on my experience working in parochial schools, but I can also look at the dollars and cents and the service aspect of it. I think that type of background would be very useful on the board. I think a lot of you bring your experience to the table when making decisions and helping guide what this community is doing.
25 seconds.
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you for being here. Okay,
Thank you.
do you see yourself having the time that is needed for scheduled and ad hoc meetings, as well as personal time to do the research that is needed and get together with the public?
That was actually one of my main considerations when applying for this. I take the endeavors that I choose to get involved in very seriously. I am not someone who's willing to do half or quarter effort. So having the time to be able to invest in this type of service was something I had to take a critical look for. I even had to speak with my wife and my family because there's a trade-off there. But yes, I'm confident. I've got the time, the bandwidth, and the fortitude to spend the required energy that this position requires.
It's a good answer. Bandwidth's important up here. Okay. So Cassie kind of jumped on my second question to just describe your position on parental choice in primary and secondary education. So can you add anything to that? I think you answered pretty thoroughly what.
Sure, I'll expand on that just a little bit. I don't think that there's a parent in this room or this school district who doesn't want some choices for their kid. Whether that's just extracurriculars, whether it's if they're going to be a little more STEM focused or a little more arts and classical education focused. But much like President Rusterholz alluded to earlier, we've pretty much all got the same goals and just a little bit different ideas about how to get there. So when we talk about parent choice, I don't see it as this hot button issue. I think it's something that every parent wants. We just have to figure out how we bring our definitions and exercise our parental choice, kind of closer together.
And my last question, because you just answered the next question. Knowing that as a school board member that you're required to take the oath to uphold the Colorado State Constitution as well as the United States Constitution, describe how you would support upholding the constitutions as a board member, and how is it important to children's education?
Well, of course, the Constitution of the United States and the state of Colorado is the social contract under which we all operate, right? I would uphold it as a board member by ensuring that the rights carved out in that Constitution are guaranteed for our citizens of our country and our state were upheld in whatever capacity I was involved.
Thank you. That's all I have. Can you make it?
Yep, we still had a minute and a half left, so it's good.
Okay. Mr. Illingworth.
Thank you. Mr. Bryant, thank you so much for applying and agreeing to come in here and submit yourself to this sort of process. I really appreciate that. It takes a great deal of fortitude. So thank you so much for being willing to volunteer.
Of course, thank you.
So, Mr. Bryant, my first question is, keeping children safe is a sacred duty that we all have, especially those placed in positions of trust among children as young as 4 years old. That includes safety from exploitation and abuse, physical and sexual. To exploit a child's vulnerability, many adult abusers, as you know, seek to develop an inappropriately personal and intimate relationship with the child through the use of secret conversations or texting about sex, sexual attraction, and sexual activity. In light of that, how would you answer those parents who are concerned about the promotion and use of a school handbook in this district that encourages just that, school children, no matter how young, that they should discuss their sexuality with teachers, not licensed mental health professionals, not their parents, but teachers? How would you answer those concerns?
That's a very good question. I am not well versed in the area of the school handbook that you're talking about, that would encourage children to have those kind of discussions with their teacher. I would be concerned that, A, does the teacher have the right teaching and oversight to be having those conversations? As someone who's worked with children before, oftentimes when there are sensitive conversations, things like that, it's not something you do alone with a child. You want another trusted adult, you know, kind of as that check and balance, and exactly for that safety with, you know, the kids. When I've been involved in scouting, when I've been involved in education, I had to go through strict background checks. There were extensive policies in place about how adults interacted with children. Obviously, our teachers are a little different. They're in a classroom, a lot of times alone with a large group of kids. But when we're teaching things like math or, you know, doing story time, I don't know that that type of oversight's needed. But if we're talking about conversations that can be associated with the beginning stages of abuse, those things do need oversight. And I think one thing we can do is address it via policy. You know, how, if these conversations need to happen, how are they going to happen? Because obviously, sometimes kids do come to teachers with questions about sexuality or even report abuse. So those conversations do happen sometimes. We need to make sure that then, when they do happen, that they're going to be handled properly and, you know, create a policy that ensures the safety of the kids.
And obviously I'm not talking about, you know, a child reporting abuse. I mean,
Okay.
That's the law, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And many professionals, including teachers and nurses and things like that, are mandatory reporters under the law, that if they're told something like that, they're going to have to contact the law enforcement. And the handbook I'm talking about, it's by the Trevor Project, and it's been released publicly through court requests in the past. It contains this statement that it's written for a child. It says to the student, "You are never too young to discuss your sexuality with a teacher." You agree with that statement?
Yes.
You think that a child is never too young to discuss their
No,
sexuality?
I'm sorry, I disagree with that statement.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. I have two school-age boys. One of them is in 7th grade and the other in 2nd. We have had a number of conversations along the way, you know, as natural questions arise and things like that. But there was certainly a time where my child had no concept of sexuality, reproduction, attraction, things like that. So why would it be appropriate when my child doesn't have that concept and it's not relevant to them? I do believe that as kids get older, as they go through adolescence, as they enter adulthood, life becomes infinitely more complex. And as they develop, conversations about sexuality are necessary. But again, those can be staged, they can be age appropriate, and if it's part of a curriculum or a school program, they can be clearly defined and given to parents beforehand so parents know what's being discussed and how it is being presented.
That was time.
Do you have any more questions?
I have 3 more.
Well, I will share part of my time with you if you don't take up all my time.
And Sue had some time, right? Like a minute? About a minute and a half.
Okay.
I will yield my time.
Sue has yielded some time.
Okay. Okay, so Mr. Bryant, in his 2015 book, Between the World and Me, Ta-Nehisi Coates writes, among other things, quote, "The power of domination and exclusion is central to the belief in being white, and without it, white people would cease to exist." My question to you, do you agree with this teaching? Would it be appropriate, or even lawful, to teach a child to view a person as inherently bad or dangerous simply because of the color of their skin?
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. Can you repeat the quote from the book, please, one more time?
from Between the World and Me, quote, "The power of domination and exclusion is central to the belief in being white, and without it, white people would cease to exist."
Well, I guess to start off with, I identify as white. All of my ancestors, or for the most part, were from Europe, so I'd be classically a white American. I don't know that I agree that part of that identity involves domination and exclusion. I actually view myself as a pretty inclusive person, and I think it's almost anti-American and anti-democratic to pursue or idolize domination. So no, I don't.
Divide people up by race.
I definitely believe that people can have different experiences based on cultural background and race, but no, I don't think that's a defining characteristic. I'm very much of the Martin Luther King Jr. school of thought that it's the content of the character rather than pigmentation. Sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So, Mr. Bryant, it has often been said that there must be a separation between church and state, and most especially public schools. Yet, as school board directors, we often receive comments, emails, and communications from constituents. One such large group of constituents is the concerned parents of Teller County. And their members often attend our meetings and write us to ensure they are heard and seen. One of the administrators of this group, and an influential voice, is Matt Galowski. Recently, he suggested that we should invite the Satanic Temple to our school board meetings. And that
Okay,
is
no.
Wait.
I'm sorry, you
Hold on.
can speak out here, but you're
It's right here.
disparaging a very good man. You do not get to do that
Can
in this setting.
let me address that. May I address it real quick?
Mr. Russell,
I'm going to
please
address
stop
something right now.
Please stop this.
No more names. I just want to say, we should not, I do not want to have names mentioned here.
It's publicly
It doesn't
posted
matter.
It's publicly posted.
Let me finish. No more mentioning names like that, please, by anyone, not by our candidates, not by board members. I hate interrupting this way, but let's talk about subjects that we can answer.
Well, I will say this. It's publicly posted and has been publicly posted on the internet for some time. I have a copy of it right here, and I will make it available to anyone who wishes it.
David, we are above that.
I will continue.
Actually, you're not above that.
Wow.
Sir, please, let's not add to this. I'm trying to disarm this and bring it back.
And thank you.
Thank
for
you.
doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
He recently suggested inviting the Satanic Temple to our school board meetings. Do you think it's appropriate to invite a religious organization such as Satanists to participate in government functions and the education of public school children? As a school board director, how would you respond to a suggestion like this?
I am certainly no lawyer or legal scholar, but as I understand the separation of church and state, it's that there should not be any official endorsement of a religion or sponsorship, and generally as it plays out, it's kind of an all or nothing thing. That if one group is invited to attend, that it seems like legally you're obligated to allow other groups. Personally, I don't know. I understand that there are people of faith that are in our community, of different faiths. But as a school board, I don't know how that type of interaction would be relevant to the mission of educating our kids. So if the board wanted to start doing invocations or prayer or something like that, like some government meetings start out with, that would certainly be their choice. But as far as I know, there's legal precedent out there that kind of dictates how you handle that if you open that door. Now, would I personally invite the Satanic Temple into a school board meeting? No. But I don't know that I would invite another organization in a invocational capacity either.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My final question. Recently, another one of the leaders of the Concerned Parents of Teller County, whose name I will not mention, but who I will say I also have a post from Facebook, and I will provide it after the meeting to anyone who likes, She called for bringing drag queens into our schools to perform a fashion show for children. What are your thoughts on how such a proposal would further the educational mission of the public school system? And how would you respond to a petition to do this at an elementary school?
I would be really interested on how that was relevant to the education of elementary kids. I can't see the connection. Personally, if there was a petition, trying to start that type of a program in our schools, I would not sign it. I just don't see the relevance.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Russell.
Thank you. I'm the last one. Each candidate for the director has received a copy of the Board of Directors Education mission statement and purpose statement. I would like to hear some of your thoughts about that statement. Is this something that you can support? If so, why and what do you think is most important in the statement? If this is not something you wholly agree with, then tell us what you would change to be able to support it.
Absolutely. So the board purpose statement, I can wholeheartedly get behind. I believe that public education is the service that enables us to give a basis of knowledge for our society. It allows us to interact with each other and have a common history and a common language that we all speak. I am a product of public education, and I would like to think that I have received a full and thorough education, and that part of the product of that full and thorough education is patriotism. I am proud to be an American. I know that's something that may not be common in my and younger generations, and I think that partially that's because it's not being communicated in our schools. We talk a lot about American history. We talk a lot about the big moments in American history, right? But sometimes those moments, the way they're framed in discussions, can leave an impression, and that can either be one that's going to make you reflect on what we're doing here, this American experiment, or it can make you ashamed. If all I knew about the United States was our shameful history, I don't think I could say I was a proud American. But I have received a complete and thorough education, and I know that the United States had slavery. But I also know that we are a modern nation who rid ourselves of the scourge of slavery faster than any other country in its history. I think that's something that we can both be reflective on and proud of. Our founding fathers stated that they were looking to create a more perfect nation. They acknowledged right off the bat that America is not perfect, but we can pursue perfection. We can always get a little bit closer. And all of that comes from a full and complete education. So when you ask me about the board purpose statement, yeah, I believe that education serves as a foundation of knowledge, but also it is a cultural homogenizer. We should come out of our public schools with roughly the same idea of what it means to be an American and where our country is heading. Now, that doesn't mean we have to be lockstep. It doesn't mean we have to teach one side of the history books or anything like that. But I do believe it means that we have that full and complete discussion that allows our students to come out of schools as critical thinkers who can evaluate what it means to be an American, what it means to participate in our society, and who are ready to work with everybody else and build that more perfect union. As far as the core beliefs go, I've talked about parental choice there, and I align with that strongly. I also align with partnering and consulting with the parents and families to figure out what that choice should look like in Woodland Park and what the education we're offering our children should look like. So I'd say that's probably the thing I identify with most, is partnering with the parents of the community to define what the education we're offering our children looks like.
Thank you.
You have
How
20
much time?
seconds. 20 seconds.
Well, why don't you just finish with your closing statement then, and I'll reserve my questions for later on. No, kidding. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Well, I hope you have gotten to hear a little about what I'm all about. I've had a chance to meet with so many of you in my 2 years, almost 2 years here in the area. I've had a chance to hear from families who absolutely love the schools their kids are in. I'm one of them. I've heard from families who had problems getting services from our school district and had to find other solutions. I know that there is a lot of contention with the choices that are being made right now in our community. I honestly believe that if we all sit down and talk face to face, and maybe a little less Facebook posting, that we're going to find that we align on a lot of things, like getting the best education for our kids, like making the best use of our tax dollars so we are providing the best services to our students. There's a direct correlation there. I'm also someone who is long-term invested in this. I'm not thinking about the Woodland Park School District for the next 6 months, the next year, the next 2 years, or anything like that. I'm here for the next decade at least. So the decisions that I'm looking to be part of, I'm going to be strategic and long-term about them. I'm looking to build not only a school system that's going to be better tomorrow for our students, but that's going to continue that trajectory for the next 10 years. I think we're doing amazing things here. There was a lot of concern when Merit was starting. I was one of those people concerned. What's this going to do to our school system? Is it going to take away tax dollars from my kids at the middle school in Columbine? But what it ended up doing was meeting the needs of a community that just wasn't getting served with the choices that we had. And if you talk to Merit parents, you really hear that story every single time. That the culture of Merit, that the education that's being offered there is what was right for their kids, and all of a sudden things were clicking and it was working for them. And that's one of the big parts of school choice, is not every kid and every student is the same. I think we can all acknowledge that kids learn different and that sometimes they need different programs, and different opportunities to meet their needs and to get the best, education for them. What I mean all of that to say is there's a lot of room to come together. And I really believe that I'm a person that can help do that. I've met so many people here through my work on the school accountability committees, the district accountability committees. I have built relationships and rapport with parents, with local citizens groups, with teachers, with students even. I believe that I can help bring back that dialogue and bring the discourse back to a level where we're going to be much more productive as a community. I've heard it said that diversity is a strength when we're aligned in a common core. And I agree with that. When we come together, our diversity makes the end result of the product that we produce infinitely better. There's so much research that shows that. Where diversity is not a strength is when we can't, come together and align. So I really think what I can offer is finding those opportunities for us to align where diversity is going to be our strength and where our diversity is going to really take the school district to the next level. I think we're doing some amazing things. I think we can be the gold standard for how kids can get educated in this region. So I would love to be a part of that. I hope that our conversations, what you know about me, and what you've heard, emphasize that as well. So I thank you for your consideration. I thank you for the opportunity to apply. And I do know that you have two excellent other candidates. So I'm excited to see what the school board does, and I'm excited to work with you in whatever capacity that is in the future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Steph.
I've been on the other side, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the questions.
Now, what do you want me?
Thanks
Stay
so
in
much.
the room since he's already interviewed and just sit back? What do you guys?
Yeah, Seth, you can stay in the room if you'd like.
You want to
already
just move
interviewed.
your chair, like maybe just,
No intimidating
You can
other
sit back.
candidates.
I'll go sit in the audience. I'll join my wife if you don't mind.
okay.
Go for it. He saved a seat for you.
Who did? She's good like that.
So,
Oh, no.
it's like still asleep a little bit.
He likes to sleep.
Kind of feels like sleep.
Hello, are you ready?
As ready as I'm gonna get.
Nick, well, thank you so much for being here and for applying for this volunteer job. We really appreciate it. I think we have three great candidates, like was said earlier. Would you like to do a 2-minute opening, a 2-minute closing, or combine both together somehow?
I'll do an opening.
Okay? Then after that, Cassie will start with the questions.
Very good.
All right, go ahead.
We've lived and worked in Teller County for 30 years. Our daughter went to Woodland Park School from Summit through high school and graduated in 2008 from here. So we hadn't really been involved in the school for some time. Then I began taking a closer look at our district in late 2020 and got involved to some degree. And our children are our future and our country's future. And I felt like we have begun to look past reading, writing, and arithmetic, and it shows in our rankings around the world. We used to be number one, and now our tests are below the average globally. So I just felt like we've got to try to turn this back around. I liked number one. And so I decided to get involved, and so here I am. Then something else happened that was a blessing. Our daughter and kids moved back from Missouri, so they came back and are home again. And we have two of the grandchildren in Merritt, and we have another one over here at the high school, and they're all doing fantastic. So that was a unknown blessing. So we are involved in the school district again in a big way, and we like it.
Okay, thank you. Cassie?
All right. Why do you want to be a member of the Board of Education? Which I sort of felt like you just answered some of that in your intro, so if you want to elaborate on that, feel free.
Well, I mean, I do. I want to get involved, and I've been involved in various things all my life and got involved, and I had people come to me and complain all the time. And when I said, well, you need to engage and get involved, and they said, no, I'm too busy. I said, well, if you're too busy to get involved, then you're too busy to talk about it. So we would end the conversation. And you see that in every facet of life. Everyone wants to complain, but nobody wants to roll up their sleeves and do it. So this is important to us. It's important to the future of this country. And our kids are our future. So I feel it's important to engage.
Thank you. Next question. With the facilities not being used in their fullest potential, how does the school board balance the need to provide our community with quality education and with the need to respond to the local taxpayer burden?
Well, this has been a challenge for a while, and, our schools are at or about half capacity, slightly over half. And I think we owe it to the taxpayers to consolidate schools and put people in them. Maybe we do another charter. I don't know what we do we could fill those spaces with some creative thinking and get those numbers up. They'll be good in so many ways, but it'll be very good on the tax base.
This board ran a campaign and won on school choice and educational opportunities. What does parent choice mean to you, and how would you support that as a board member?
Well, we had personal experience with it. It was wonderful to have a choice when our kids came home. Choice gives everyone an option. They can stick with the original situation we were and are in, or if there's other opportunities, they can take those. And it fit our family very well. All of the grandkids are excelling in their schools. They're all part of the district, but two different facets of it. So I think choice is important, and choice creates some healthy competition between the various schools to be better. And that's what we're all in this room for, is to be better.
My last question, what outside interests or experiences would you bring to the board that would be helpful to the group?
Well, I've got a solid business background. My wife and I owned our own business up here for 30 years. It was very successful. I've got a good business background, a good money management background, and I could bring that to the table. And, I have some common sense, and the problem with common sense is it's not very common anymore. So I can bring that to the table as well. So I think I could be an asset.
Thank you. So, yes.
Okay. Well, Mick, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm gonna cut my question short because Miss Cassie took two of my questions.
Okay.
So, and then I would like to yield, if I have any time left, to the gentleman to my right who didn't get to ask all his questions. So, I know that you're retired, but do you see yourself having the time that is needed for scheduled and ad hoc meetings, as well as the personal time to do a lot of research, a lot of listening, a lot of community?
I considered that. I know enough about what goes on with the school board that, it takes some time, some serious time. And I'm prepared to put that time into the job. And I've got 3 grandkids that will suck up any time I have, but I've spoken to them and they're all very supportive. So I don't have any doubt I can meet the time commitment.
Thank you. Okay. My second question is, knowing that as a school board member, you're required to take the oath to uphold the Colorado State Constitution as well as the United States Constitution, describe how you would support upholding the constitutions as a board member, and how is it important for the children's education?
It's imperative. One of my concerns is that we don't talk much about the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution, and I think our children need to understand that. That's what this country is founded on, and I would have no problem adhering to those. I wish we did across the board, across this country. We still have a Constitution, and it's held up for 250 years. I think we need to get back to following it.
Thank you. I will yield the rest of my time. How much time do I have?
3 minutes left, so.
3 minutes?
3 minutes.
Cassie had 1:45.
Mr. Ellingworth.
Mr. Bates, thank you so much for being willing to apply to serve this community as well as to sit through what can't be a totally fun process, so I really appreciate it. So I do have 4 questions, Mr. Bates. Sir, in his 2015 book, Between the World and Me, Ta-Nehisi Coates writes, among other things, quote, "The power of domination and exclusion is central to the belief in being white, and without it, white people would cease to exist. Do you agree with this teaching, and would it be appropriate or even lawful to teach a child to view a person as inherently bad or dangerous simply because of the color of their skin?
Absolutely not. Justice is blind for a reason, and I think there's too much emphasis put on skin color as we speak, but every person brings value regardless of the color of their skin, and it should be very easy to treat everyone equally because everyone's got something they can bring to the table.
Thank you. Keeping children safe is a sacred duty that we all have, especially those placed in positions of trust among children as young as 4 years old. That includes safety from exploitation and abuse, both physical and sexual. To exploit a child's vulnerability, as you know, many adult abusers seek to develop an inappropriately personal and intimate relationship with the child through the use of secret conversations or texting about sex, sexual attraction, and sexual activity. In light of that, how would you answer those parents who are concerned about the promotion and use of a school handbook in this district that encourages school children, no matter how young, to discuss their sexuality with teachers, not licensed mental health professionals, not their parents, but with teachers?
Well, first of all, it's the parents' responsibility to introduce their children to those types of things. And if we're doing a good job of parenting, which can be challenging, our children have good balance and they shouldn't need to go confide in a teacher. I, as a parent, would be very uncomfortable. I would feel like they were going around behind my back. If there's going to be a discussion, I would like for my wife and I to be a part of that discussion with our child. So I can't condone that.
Thank you. It has often been said that there must be a separation between church and state, and most especially public schools. Yet, as school board directors, we do often receive comments, emails, and communications from constituents. One such large group of constituents is the concerned parents of Teller County, and their members often attend our meetings and write us to ensure they are heard and seen. One of the influential voices of this group, an administrator of their Facebook group, recently suggested to invite the Satanic Temple to our school board meetings. Do you think it's appropriate to invite a religious organization such as Satanists to participate in government functions and the education of public school children? As a school board director, how would you respond to a suggestion like this?
I would be very much against that. This separation of church and state has been around a long time, but it's backwards. It was intended to keep the state out of religion, not religion out of the state. And that has been convoluted over the years, or the many years. But there's not a place for that. We're a Judeo-Christian country, and there would probably be some examples where someone could come in. There have been examples of people of religion coming in and doing things within the school, but it's really within some parameters. That Church of Satan wouldn't be within my parameters.
Thank you. My final question. Recently, another one of the administrators of the Concerned Parents of Teller County called for bringing drag queens into our schools to perform a fashion show for children. And I have the Facebook post here if you want to see it afterwards. What are your thoughts on how such a proposal would further the educational mission of the public school system? How would you respond to a petition to do this, say, at an elementary school?
Absolutely not. Our children are being over-sexualized at far too young of an age as it is. I've seen, this is big news across the country, and it hurts my heart to watch these young kids at these drag shows. And it hurts me more that their parents are taking them to them. These are young kids that don't really even understand what they're witnessing. And absolutely not.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rusterholz.
Thank you. Mick, each candidate has been given a copy of the Board of Education's mission and purpose statement. I would like to hear some of your thoughts about that. Is this statement something that you can support? And if so, why? And what do you think is most important in this statement? If this is not something you can wholly agree with, then tell us what you would like to change to be able to support it.
I've read that. I've been aware of it since it was put together. I agree with the whole thing. I mean, the fact that the Declaration of Independence and the United States Constitution are spoke of at the beginning of this lays it out for its entirety. And so that is important to me, that foundation. And then further on down in there, it talks about the parents and, district philosophies that align with parental choice, oriented to parental expectations and values, and most importantly, acknowledge parents as the primary educator of their children. Those are critical things, and those are two very important things to me and my family. So I very much like that mission statement.
Is there anything that you would like to change or add to it, or you support it the way it is?
Oh, I could dissect it further, but overall, I thought it was well thought through and put together well, so I really wasn't in the frame of mind to critique it.
Okay. Well, even though I have more time given to me from Sue, I can't ask you any more questions because it wouldn't be fair to anybody else. So, anyway, thank you, Mick. I really appreciate you applying for this position, and thank you for your time. And you're welcome to join. Oh, I'm sorry.
Closing.
You have a closing statement, I believe.
I do not. I spilled it all in the opening.
It was all your 4 minutes.
I will say this. If I'm selected for this job, I'll give it my all. And since I'm retired, I've got a lot of all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Stretch.
You don't have to, actually.
No, I'm gonna take it too.
Guess I'll sit behind my name.
Just
pull the
grab
mic in front of
grab the
us.
microphone.
Maybe I'll sit.
So, John, thank you so much for applying for this job. It's volunteer. There's no pay with it. You know that, right? So, Don, you have an opportunity to either have an opening statement, divide your 4 minutes between an opening and a closing, have it at the beginning, the end. What would you like to do?
So I just wanted to open by saying thank you for selecting me to interview. I've been a resident of Woodland Park for over 30 years. My wife and I have raised our 2 children here and call this beautiful community our home. And I do support the board and your goals of student achievement, school choice, and growth of the district. And I'm pretty pleased to see that those goals continue to move forward, and if selected, I intend to contribute to that as well.
Okay. With that, we'll start out with Cassie.
Alright. Hi, thank you for applying, being here. Should be saying that to everyone. Sorry about that, Mick and Seth. Dave Illingworth has been doing such a good job with that. So, my first question is, why do you want to be a member of the Board of Education?
To help support like I said, the goals of the board. I am a supporter of the board, along with all of the voters who selected you to be a member of this board and to help improve our schools.
With the facilities not being used in their fullest potential, how does a school board balance the need to provide our community with quality education and with the need to respond to the local taxpayer burden?
to continue to grow our district, bring in more students. Hopefully, we'll need more school classrooms to be filled.
This board ran a campaign and won on school choice and educational opportunities. What does parent choice mean to you, and how would you support that as a board member?
I think giving more transparency to all of the parents so that they really do see what's going on in the classroom and can get more involved, such as myself.
And my last question, what outside interests or experiences would you bring to the board that would be helpful to the group?
I guess fly fishing doesn't count.
That's a good one.
That's a good one.
So in my career in IT, most of it was spent as a DoD contractor. And as a DoD contractor, I briefed a lot of 06 and general level officers. You need to be a champion of these changes, and you need to know the details. And you need to be prepared to answer hard questions, because the community will be asking those hard questions. So if you're proposing a change, you need to be prepared to stand by and support why you're doing those changes.
Well, that's my last question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sue?
Hello, Don. Thank you for being here. Thank you for applying. My first question, do you see yourself having the time that is needed for scheduled meetings and ad hoc meetings, as well as personal time to research a lot of the issues that are going on?
Yes, in fact, that's one of the reasons that I applied for this, is that I have recently retired. But I've been finding myself more busy now that I'm retired than when I was. But I want to be able to dedicate the time that's necessary to do the research, because I have a lot to learn.
Thank you. Okay, you kind of answered this with Cassie, but describe your position on parental choice in primary and secondary education.
I think there's been a large awakening, not only within our community, but across this nation, on parents being aware of what's happening in their classroom, and a lot more involvement at the local level, especially in the school boards. And giving that transparency and visibility to the parents so that they can understand what's going on in the classroom.
Okay, thank you. My last question is, knowing that as a school board member, you are required to take an oath to uphold the Colorado State Constitution as well as the United States Constitution, describe how you would support upholding the Constitution as a board member, and how is it important to children's education?
I've kind of talked about that through all of my answers, but yes, I will be upholding the Constitution and following the laws. I'm a very law-abiding citizen, and I think that's very important for all of us board members to do.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Sue. Mr. Illingworth?
Thank you. Mr. Zaleski, thank you so much for agreeing to submit to our questions and be here in front of all of your peers. And thank you for stepping up to offer to serve your community. I have 4 questions. I'll start with this one, sir. Keeping children safe is a sacred duty that we all have, especially those placed in positions of trust among children as young as 4 years old. That includes safety from exploitation and abuse, both physical and sexual. To exploit a child's vulnerability, as you know, many adult abusers seek to develop an inappropriately personal and intimate relationship with that child. They do this through the use of secret conversations or texting about sex, sexual attraction, and sexual activity. In light of those issues, how would you answer those parents who are concerned about the promotion and use of a school handbook within this district that encourages school children, no matter how young, to discuss their sexuality with teachers. Point of fact, not licensed mental health professionals, not their parents, but to discuss their sexuality, no matter how young they are, with teachers.
I think parents, again, should be involved and understand that. A parent should be the first person that child goes to. And the parent can make that determination whether they are mentally mature enough to even understand that, and not just leave it up to a school or an individual teacher to do that.
Thank you. Sir, it has often been said that there must be a separation between church and state, and most especially public schools. Yet as school board directors, we do often receive comments, emails, and communications from constituents. One such large group of constituents is the concerned parents of Teller County. And their members often attend our meetings and write us to ensure they are heard and seen. One of the administrators and influential voices of that group recently suggested in a Facebook post that we should invite the Satanic Temple to our school board meetings. Do you think it's appropriate to invite a religious organization such as Satanists to participate in government functions and the education of public school children? As a school board director, how would you respond to a suggestion like this?
I am a devout Christian, so personally I would be against it, but I also believe in the separation of religion and the school board. So why would a satanic group be allowed to speak to a school board or a public forum any more than a Christian organization or a Muslim or a Hindu?
Okay, thank you, sir. Recently, another one of the administrators of that group posted a call to bring drag queens into our schools to perform a fashion show for children. What are your thoughts on how such a proposal would further the educational mission of the public school system? And how would you respond to a petition to do this, say, at an elementary school?
I think that's ridiculous, to be honest with you. And children need to be go through their parents. If a parent wants to take a child to something that they feel is appropriate, that's fine. But you don't introduce that to a public school forum.
Thank you. Finally, in his 2015 book, Between the World and Me, Ta-Nehisi Coates writes, among other things, quote, "The power of domination and exclusion is central to the belief in being white, and without it, white people would cease to exist." End quote. Do you agree with this teaching? Would it be appropriate, or even lawful in your view, to teach a child to view a person as inherently bad or dangerous simply because of the color of their skin?
No, I do not.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Osterholz.
Thank you. Okay, Don. Each candidate has been given a copy of the Board of Education's mission and purpose statement. You should have that. I would like to hear some of your thoughts about that. Is this something that you can support? If so, why? And what do you think is most important in this statement? If it's not something you wholly agree with, could you tell us what you would change to be able to support it?
I support it wholly. And hopefully I've been giving my answers that will lead you to believe that I support your direction and your mission statement. That's what you ran on when you were elected, and that's what I voted for.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's your whole answer? That's your answer?
That's the
Got it. Thank you. To the point. Since there's a little bit of time left, is there anything that you wanted to say at the end to close?
Well, it's just some questions. It's my understanding that a decision will be made at this meeting. We will fill this position. And then my second question would be, how soon would they be starting?
Well, we will be deciding this evening, and we'll be sworn in at our next regular meeting,
Right.
February 8th.
Okay.
Okay? All right. If there's nothing else, you're welcome to take a seat in the audience.
Thank you.
Well, I have to say I really appreciate the three of you coming and applying and interviewing. It was very good. So it brings me to, I'm thinking that I'm going to ask something unusual. I would like a motion that instead of hiring one candidate, that we would hire three. So do I have a motion? So you know it was a joke right off. Unfortunately, we can't do that. So at this time, I'd like to open it up to discussion about our candidates. And let's start out with our first questioner and put her on the spot.
First, I want to thank all the candidates for coming in, being here tonight, and answering all of our questions, especially in this crowd. I know I did this about a little over 6 months ago, and I did not have a room full of people. There was a small crowd, and I didn't have a camera crew either. So thank you so much for your answers and being here tonight. It really takes a lot of bravery for that. To the board for discussion, I think we have three great candidates, and just, they're all uniquely different. Some of them overlap with some of their jobs as well as skill sets. And so I have some personal questions that I thought, stood out more so than others as well, but then they all answered them really well. So I know this was really a hard discussion when you guys had to do this, when speaking of me, because we were trying not to mention names and such. So, but I will go ahead and lead it back to you.
All right. Would you like to go next?
So I want to thank you all for applying and going in front of the camera crew and answering our questions. And I think all three of you did very well. And you are on board with our mission statement that's important to this board. And all three of you, it's very important for you for parental choice, which is important to this board, and to have more than one teaching method in our district to enhance the educational needs of different students. And it's going to be a hard decision, but thank you all for applying and being interested in the children who are, as Meg said, the future generation is our future of America. Thank you.
Sue, that's the one thing that stuck out to me, and I made a note that every candidate wrote about the children first. It was always children-centric, and so, which is really important to me, it's really important to this board.
David.
Thank you. I want to start off by mentioning that the gentlemen who have all applied are doing so because Chris Austin stepped down from the board, and I want to just keep him in mind when we go through this process. Chris Austin is a long-term resident of this community. He was on this board before any of us were elected. He served for many years, and he did it the same way all these fine gentlemen did, by applying, by putting himself out there, and by accepting the responsibility. And, we all owed him a lot of thanks. He certainly helped guide us as we got into our public duties, and he always kept us on our toes. And so I look forward to continuing his tradition of being a devoted servant who always, I hope it's fair to say, he always wanted to keep consideration for our schools as a whole, for our students, our teachers, for our staff, and to foster cooperation, dialogue, and mutual respect. And I think he always did it with a servant's heart. So, he's not gone. He's still around. So I hope I don't sound too elegiac, but we thank him, and I just want to keep him in mind as we move forward. And I'll just say that I agree with you, David. I wish we could pick more than one. But we clearly have three fine gentlemen here who have a keen interest in our community schools and who clearly would accept the public duty and the job at hand with a very seriousness of purpose appropriate to that charge. And so I really just want to thank everybody again. Like we did before several months ago, I don't think it would be appropriate. I don't think it would be classy to say why I would vote for any one over the other, especially when all three of them are such good gentlemen and such fine servants, and being so willing to volunteer. I'll just say that, like I said, I wish we could pick more than one, but my decision ultimately will be guided by the question that guides all of my service here on the school board, which is what can we do to make a child's education better? And that's the number one question we always have. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I still wish I could have got a motion to, because when it comes down to this, when you have such candidates that I like, I don't really like picking one. Some of the things that I was looking for is that experience in leadership, someone who personally, one of the things that I'm looking for is somebody with a moderate approach. And what I mean by that is a tempered approach, that there's a lot of passion surrounding school boards all across the country, and we're no different here than a lot of places. So those are the kind of things that I've been looking for in the character of a person, of a candidate. Everyone was so united in their focusing on education and the foundations of education, so that made it no easier for me either. One thing that I did like that one of the candidates said is that looking for that common history, language, and I added some things to it as well in my head, but finding that commonality of what makes us uniquely a society. I like that. And bringing diversity together. That was something else someone said. I like business experience that people bring, and both raising their kids and having raised their kids here. So I'll tell you guys, you have not made this easy at all. But thank you so much. And David, I'm really glad that you brought up Chris Austin, because he's a good man. I enjoyed meeting with him so many times, and I'm glad he's still here in our community. He's a very good man. So you'll be replacing a great guy. Well, that's all I have to say, other than I'll ask you later what that word meant. Elegiac.
Well, I wanted to sound like I was too sad or something like that. So.
Just wanted clarification. All right, well, at this time, is anyone prepared to make a motion? Anyone can make a motion.
Pick you last time. It's only fair you have to make a motion.
Okay. I would motion to choose the candidate for the Woodland Park School Board as Mick Bate.
Is there a second for Mick?
Second.
Are there any other candidates to advance? Any other discussion on that?
I think that if we did that, we'd never be able to choose. I think, with my thanks and gratitude to everyone, I'm ready to vote on the motion.
Are you ready to vote? We have a first and a second motion. Do we have a second?
Yes.
Roll call.
Illingworth,
Aye.
Kimbrell,
Aye.
Patterson,
Aye.
Rusterholz.
Aye. Well, Mr. Bates, thank you very much. The next step will be, at the next meeting, you'll be sworn in and you'll participate in the next meeting, and that is February 8th. So thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for your participation.
David, before we adjourn, could I make a motion for a round of applause for Dawn and Seth as well?
Yes.
Please do. May I have a motion to adjourn this evening's board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Illingworth,
Aye.
Kimbrell,
Aye.
Patterson,
Aye.
Rusterholz.
Aye. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I appreciate it.
For woman named the camera.
I'd like a copy of your Facebook posts. Oh, because it's, thank you. And thank you for handling.
Michael, you.
I have to write that in here. Unprivileged. And I want to thank you. No, but I'm just saying. Whenever I turn. Also, it's not my way.
You can't get it.
Firstly, we have.